それだけではない。黄金に輝くこの粉はカラスミ。
Maple muffins, crispy bacon, poached eggs, hollandaise, and fish powder sprinkled on those muffins that we're going to spend so much time making. To make the Queen's Benedict, we do need to start by making our own maple English muffins. For this, add 500 grams worth of bread flour to a very large bowl, followed by 8 grams worth of instant dry yeast, then 10 grams worth of kosher salt, and 15 grams worth of maple syrup. They had mentioned that the muffins were slightly sweet and had a nice taste to them, so I wanted to sweeten this up with some maple syrup because, well, it's breakfast and maple syrup and breakfast, and you get the idea. And for the milk, we are using 375 grams worth of cold whole milk. The reason why we're using cold whole milk for this instead of warming it up and blooming the yeast is because I'm going to overnight this dough. After adding in your milk, slowly start combining it so this way you can begin hydrating all of that flour. You don't want to try to form too much gluten by being too rough with this, and what you're really trying to do is just ensure that all of the flour that's in the bowl is fully saturated. Once you can no longer see any of that rogue flour hanging out at the bottom of your bowl, this is ready to go to rest for 1 hour. Grab yourself a lid and make sure it is nicely shut and pop this into the refrigerator for that solid hour. This is going to ensure that the flour becomes hydrated so this way we can start kneading our dough. After that hour of hydration, your dough is ready to be kneaded. You can see how nice and stretchy and elastic this is, and this is what you're really looking for. On a clean cutting board, drop just a touch of flour so this way it doesn't stick too hard, and sprinkle a touch of flour right on top so this way your fingers don't stick to the dough while you're working with it. Now you are going to knead this for around 8 to 10 minutes depending on how much gluten you can develop with your gorilla knuckles. I did knead mine for around 10 minutes just to make sure some gluten was fully developed, but you're really looking to make sure that this dough becomes slightly shiny. I also tried using the slap and fold method, the palm strike technique where you constantly knead the dough away from you, forming all of that gluten, and started to roll this into a nice round to try to get it nice and tight. This is what my dough ended up looking like after around 10 minutes of kneading. Alternatively, you can just use your stand mixer. Now in that clean large bowl, grease it up with just a touch of oil and then plop your dough right into the center of that. This dough needs to sit for 24 hours in the refrigerator. Do not leave this out on your cutting board or anything like that. You're going to wake up to a mess. This goes in the refrigerator for 24 hours. As you can see by my shirt and pants change, it is the next day and our dough is fully proofed and ready to go. It's nice and plump and it came in at around 900 grams. Do make sure you measure your dough out so you know how many pieces you can cut. Place this onto your floured surface and cut this into 9 equal portions. I'm trying to bring each piece of dough to around 100 grams, but you can give or take 5 grams. It's not really going to make a difference. Just make sure it's within that range. Now to form these, what I like to do is bring the edges towards the middle and press up and then pinch the bottom portion. This is going to give us a nice round piece of dough without overworking it too much. Do the same thing with each and every one of your pieces of dough and make sure that that bottom is pinched so it doesn't open up while it's resting. After you're done forming all of your pieces of dough, grab a bit of semolina flour. This is going to give it that iconic crunch and that iconic crust. Take each piece of dough, give it a small pat down, and then place it into your semolina flour, patting it down into that as well. You want to make sure you have some beautiful coatage of semolina so that way you get that nice crispy crust. Do the same thing with all of your muffins, making sure that they are coated top and bottom with semolina, avoiding to try to get too much semolina on the sides if you want that really iconic look. I ended up placing a few of these on a smaller sheet tray and the rest of them on my bigger sheet tray so I didn't overcrowd it. Make sure you do cover these up, and these need to rest until they double in size, and it took around 3 hours because my house is so cold right now. After 3 hours, we are going to griddle these on a cast iron pan. I'm using my paella pan, and I had heated it to a low heat over around 10 minutes to make sure it distributed heat evenly. When you're placing the muffins into the paella pan, be very careful so you don't deflate them. Use a spatula to give these a flip, and you can see that this paella pan didn't heat evenly, so I probably should have used a thicker cast iron pan versus this wider paella pan. What I ended up having to do was move them around here and there to make sure that they browned evenly on each side. I did also gently press them down so they didn't get too big. After 4 or 5 minutes on each side, you start developing that really beautiful crust, and this is when we're going to put it into the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit on a sheet tray that you can't see. I'm not just like tossing them in there, make sure they're on a sheet tray. I performed the same thing with the next batch of muffins, and the batch that was on the smaller sheet tray ended up not proofing as much as I would have liked, so they are a little smaller. After 7 minutes in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, these are nice and light and airy, and they do need to be cooled down on a wire rack before you decide to cut them, otherwise you're going to have a bad time. They're going to be gummy and gooey. Pop the rest of your muffins into the oven, making sure they cook thoroughly, and this is what your muffins will look like when they are done. They're beautiful, they're crispy, they have a nice height to them, they're not super flat, and that's what I really like in my English muffin. You can see the non-proofed ones versus the ones that proofed properly, but these are good to go, and this is the thick boy I'm going to be using for our eggs Benedict. Now to make some hot mayo, you're going to need a heat-proof bowl for this, and just a few egg yolks. Make sure you do separate the egg yolks from the egg whites, and we're only going to need 3 egg yolks. The egg whites you can save for your breakfast later because you are going to use them, I promise. That's for me anyways. Now in the world's cutest sauce pot, we're going to melt down some unsalted butter. We only need around 90 grams worth of butter, and just bring it over to the stove and gently start melting it down. While that's melting down, give your egg yolks a quick whisk, making sure that they are broken down completely. This is going to help us incorporate the butter later. Once your butter is nicely melted, slowly begin tempering your butter into your egg yolks. If you dump this all in at once, you are going to end up with a broken, scrambled mess. After you've tempered them, bring this over to the stove with a pot of simmering water and begin cooking your egg yolks. Remove it from the pot as needed if they feel like they're getting too warm, and you can tell by the edge of the bowl if they start to overcook. You're going to cook this until they thicken up, and Paul has scrambled his hollandaise, but don't worry. Place this into a cup, then grab your stick blender and start blending this. Yes, it still looks broken, but don't worry. Do you know how you emulsify it? Hot water. Yes, do not throw away your egg yolks and your butter because they are expensive. I had many a chef who told me, never throw away hollandaise if it breaks. You can just bring it back together with a blender because it's just hot mayo. Even after breaking, look at how beautiful and velvety and creamy this is. You would never know that it had broken. Season this with a pinch of salt and some fresh cracked pepper, and because they mentioned there was some acidity in the sauce, I'm hitting this with just a squeeze of lemon. You can use yuzu or lime or do whatever you want for that part. After you've added everything, give it a taste, making sure it's up to par with your salt. This was not, so I went ahead and added just a touch more to make sure it was nicely seasoned. Your hollandaise is now ready to go. Crisis averted. Easy clap. You can use any bacon you want for this section of it, but I am using some nicer thick cut bacon that I picked up from my local grocer. In my same paella pan over a low medium heat, I'm gonna let these toast up just to get nice and crispy. While those are cooking down, grab a pot of water and hit this with around 30 milliliters of vinegar, and make sure to flip that bacon so it doesn't burn on one side. Now after the water has come to a simmer, crack an egg into a small ladle, or just go all in and place the egg directly into the pot. Give it a nice swirl and drop your egg directly into the water. Make sure that the egg doesn't stick to the bottom like mine kind of did, just to make sure you don't overcook it. The bacon is also done, so I'm removing that from the pan and making sure I place this on some towels to drain any excess oil. After 4 or 5 minutes, my egg is also nicely poached, and I'm placing that on the same paper towel to drain off any excess liquid. Now we just have to finish off this Benny. Cut your muffin in half, and we do have to toast this guy. I'm toasting it in the same paella pan I just cooked my bacon grease in because that's delicious. Now before we finish this, we do have to sprinkle this with botorga powder or karasumi powder. This is mullet roe powder, and this is what they had kind of alluded to. You're not using actual fish eggs, you are using this powder to sprinkle onto your muffin. They distinctly mentioned it was a powder, so this is the closest thing I could find, but hit your 2 slabs of bacon right on top, followed by your poached eggs, and then a nice slathering of your hot mayo hollandaise. Ask Alex French Guy Cooking about mayonnaise or hollandaise. Season with black pepper and flaky salt, and there it is, Erina's Queen Benedict from Food Wars. And the only thing that's more satisfying than making your own English muffins really is Into the AM sending you a bunch of new gear with all their cool designs, and really, I mean, you can't really go wrong with any of these t-shirts. They're super comfortable. You can make sure that you get the designs that you want. They're fitted really, really well. And if you use code CHEFPK during checkout or the link down below, they're gonna give you 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off of any t-shirts that you're seeing me pull off right now, including these sweatpants, which I'm gonna show you these sweatpants too, you know, because it's the morning and I always wear sweatpants now. So you can get all of this gear at intotheam.com/chefpk for 10% off, and it's cold, so I'm gonna put my pants back on. There it is, guys, the Queen's Benedict. The only real difference that I've seen in this Benedict versus just a regular eggs Benedict is that karasumi powder. I can never pronounce it right. Link is down below. It honestly smells like my cat's food. This is the real tell, right? Look, I already know this yolk. Oh, Mother Nature's mayonnaise. That's how you know the Benny is gonna be good. And cheers to Queen Erina. To be honest, I don't think I like it. That powder just gives it a weird bitter taste. Everything else is great. The muffin is great, the texture is nice, the bacon is smoked really well, the egg is cooked perfectly, the salt is nice, even the hollandaise is nice, which is just hot mayo. It's a great Eggs Benedict, just not with that fish powder. It's not worth the $15 they paid for that jar. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy some egg bennies. My name is Chef PK. Get subscribed. Remember, keep playing with your food. That's just gonna stay there. I'll come back for the muffin and the bacon. Gandalf, do you want some of Erina's special powder? Come here. Yeah, because that's all this is good for. Here you go. Yes. Yes.